Hello and welcome to Motorboats Monthly's practical section brought to you by Garmin. Today we're going to be looking at a course to steer. A course to steer is a compass heading which allows for the effects of tide over a passage between 2 points. If we were to set off from the Needles fairway down to Cherbourg, it's pretty much 180 degrees due south. If we were to steer 180 degrees and there was no tides, that would be no problem at all. We would arrive in Cherbourg. Unfortunately, we know that there are quite strong tides in the channel, and what would actually happen if we were steering 180 degrees is that we would gradually get pushed up or down channel, and in the worst case scenario we could end up missing France altogether. So what we do is we calculate the course to steer before we set off, taking into account the tides that we're going to experience. That will give us a heading, a compass heading to steer to when we set off, and that will be somewhere opposite to where we think we want to go. But in actual fact, what will happen is we will go directly straight down the line, crabbing as we go, and we will end up exactly where we want to be. So the first thing we've got is our start waypoint, which we'll call waypoint A, and we've got our destination waypoint, which we'll call waypoint B. And we're just going to join those with a straight line. Now what we do for a course to steer is we do actually carry on beyond the destination waypoint, just to give us a little bit of extra length on the line, because we might need that depending on the tides. We need to know when exactly we're going to be at our start waypoint. For this exercise we're going to say we're going to be there on the 4th of May, and we're going to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now we need to know the distance of the passage between A and B, and we also need to know what speed we're going to be covering that at. Again, for this example, we're going to say we're doing 20 knots, and I've already measured this, and it's 60 nautical miles. So we now know that that's going to be a 3-hour passage for us at 20 knots. So when it comes to working out the tides that we've got to take into account, we know that we're going to need to allow for 3 hours worth of tide. So where do we get our tidal information from? Well, the start point is obviously the tidal diamonds on the chart, and we need to know which port they refer to. And on this chart we can see up here that the tidal diamonds refer to Dover. So the first port of call, if you like, is that we need to find out the time of high water Dover on the 4th of May. 0624. Now that's GMT, so we're going to add an hour to that, 0724 BST. Now the nearest tidal stream that we've got for our passage, we've got tidal stream M just here, which is pretty much bang on where we're going to be. So we're going to use tidal stream M for our 3 hours of tidal information. So we'll turn the page and find the tidal diamond information, and we've got M here. So we know that we're going to be at our start waypoint at 9 o'clock in the morning. We know that high water Dover is at 7:30, so we're going to be at our start point 1.5 hours after high water Dover. So for the first hour of our passage we are effectively over the high water Dover plus 2 hour period. So for the first hour of our passage we're going to need to find on our tidal diamond M the tidal stream strength and direction for high water plus 2, and that is 263 degrees, and we're on Neaps, so we're looking at the smaller of the figures. We're bang on Neaps on that date, so it'll be 1.9 knots. Now we also know that it's going to be a 3-hour journey, so we need to look at the next 2 hours as well. So that's the whole of the tidal information for the passage that we're going to be undertaking. That's the effects it's going to have on us. So we can now add that to the chart and start working out our course to steer. So what we need to do is we need to add these tidal vectors onto our start point. So waypoint A, firstly we're going to add a line going 263 degrees true for 1.9 nautical miles, because we're travelling for an hour and the tide runs at 1.9 knots for that hour. At the end of that line we'll add another line going 258 degrees true for 2.1 nautical miles, and then we'll add a third line at the end of that one, 295 degrees, 1.7 nautical miles. So that's the end of our 3 hours, 3 hours tidal vectors. So we can call this point here at the end, we'll call that point C. What we need to do now is we need to take our dividers and we need to open them up to our speed times the duration of the passage. So we're doing 20 knots for 3 hours, so we're going to open those up to 60 miles, which they just about do. That is 60 miles, and we put one end onto point C, just there, and then we see where the other end bisects the initial line, the AB line, and we mark that point, and we can call that point D. Now there's a little bit of a clue already here as to whether the journey is going to take more or less time than you anticipated. If point D is before point B, that means the journey is going to take a little bit longer, and if it's after point D, it means that the tide's actually helping you a little bit and the journey will actually be a little bit shorter. We can now draw a line direct between C and D, like that, and we can give that one a single arrow. That's going to be our water track. So the route we're going to actually be travelling down, this is the line we're going to be travelling down, AB. So we don't need to worry too much about any hazards on line CD, because we're not actually going to be there, but we're going to be, that's the direction we're going to be facing, but we're going to be facing it along line AB. So you need to just check to make sure finally that there's definitely no hazards between A and B. So using our plotter, we can get our true bearing between point C and D, a bearing of 176 degrees true. So that is actually our course to steer in degrees true. Now really, degrees true is not actually much use to us on a boat because we're going to be steering by the compass, so we need to turn that true heading into a compass heading. And one way to remember this is the mnemonic, True Virgins Make Dull Company. So we write TVMDC, and we put our 176 degrees true there. The other mnemonic to remember is east is least and west is best, and that tells us whether we've got to add or subtract the variation and the deviation to our calculation. So firstly we need to know what our variation is, and we get that from the compass rose on the chart, and it tells us that it's pretty much 3 degrees west, and because west is best it means we add it, so that gives us a magnetic course of 179 degrees true. Next we've got to deal with the deviation, and we're going to do that with the ship's compass card, but let's assume that we had a deviation on that heading for this vessel of say 1 degree east. And because east is least, that means we take it off. So we end up with a compass heading of 178 degrees. So 178 degrees is the heading that we will be steering on our compass when we leave point A. And if we maintain that heading for the whole 3 hours, we will arrive bang on point B in probably just under 3 hours. That's how to do your basic course to steer. I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching.